The DJI Osmo Action has received a lot of love from many reviewers, and it deserves it, but the rain of praise seems to be drowning out the flaws of the camera. In all these many years, I have not come across anything that is completely perfect. The more features there are, the more room for things to go wrong, and the DJI Osmo Action is no exception. This little action camera has its victories and some failures too at the same time. So my goal in this video is to talk about this camera's pros and cons from a real-world usage point of view. I have been using this camera for a while now under various conditions and alongside other action cams, and I can recommend this camera based on my experience. It is good in many ways, but we really need to consider its shortcomings also, so there is a balance in our expectations. So, it's pros and cons time. The front screen. This is indeed one of those things that leads the way forward. Real life application, me riding my bike. Getting the camera to frame me in the shot is now a walk in the park easy. The alternative would have been to use the phone app and check the framing. I'm wearing gloves, phone is in the jacket pocket, and a whole host of other hindrances. Front screen is an absolute victory under these circumstances. The rear screen is 1.4 inches and is clear and responsive to touch, very much like the good phone responds to our touch these days. Next, I'll talk about the battery. First of all, the battery contains its own seal and it secures into position using two locks on either sides. These sliding latches has bright orange markings. If you see it, the battery is not sealed in properly. As far as battery life goes, I'll give it a C-. And the reason for this is that I'm getting 1 hour and few minutes of recording at 4K 60 frames per second with stabilization, which in and of itself is not all that bad. I start the recording and set out on my journey, and invariably I find the battery went flat at some point of my journey, which is not unusual. This happens with other cameras as well. Some of them get a bit better recording time. The thing is, you may need more than one battery, and given the quality of the seal is vital, I would highly recommend not using any third-party battery, because if the seal fails, your camera may be at risk. The power management of the camera is why I gave it a C-. If the camera is sitting idle with the screen off, it is still draining the battery at a high rate. This I find absolutely unacceptable. The real-life implication is that I leave the camera on standby so that I can hit record button just as I need it. Some days I could only film about 15 minutes of footage like this on one battery simply because I left the camera on standby while getting to the location. The alternative for me is to hit the power button and wait for 2 seconds for it to power up and press the record, and do all this while wearing gloves, riding the motorcycle in winding mountain roads. So one hand off the handlebar, eyes off the road for a number of seconds. Yeah, statistics will not be friendly for me someday. One button press would have been ideal, but that is what will kill the battery. An action camera that is not ready to record action on demand. C- is generous. For 2021, this is really not that great. Let's touch upon the mic of the Osmo Action. I am thoroughly impressed with the wind noise cancellation. There is another real-life example. I have a Firefly 8S, good old action camera I have from years ago. Even in its waterproof housing, we have noise like this. Let's change over to DJI. When stopped, any camera will record like a champ, but now we hear engine sound. There is some wind noise that comes through, but at 60 kilometers per hour, how clean the sound is. This is truly impressive. Yet another awesome victory. A point I'd like to mention is that my motorcycle has a wind deflector which also reduces some of the wind hitting the ride, but you get the drift. The mic is good for an action cam. The Rocksteady stabilization system. As far as stabilization systems go, things are getting better and better. To the point it seems that the system in question is bulletproof, or so I thought. One day I was riding my bike with the camera mounted on the handlebar. Upon revving the engine high, the vibration caused the video to fall apart for a moment. But this was very momentary thing, as strong engine vibration goes away as soon as I change the gear. But in a racetrack, it may be a common occurrence, since you are expected to have the engine revving high a lot of the times. While this is a rather rare situation and not applicable to everyone, what is applicable to everyone is low light situations. And it does not have to get too dark. Like in this case, going from bright daylight into a tunnel. Now the tunnel is not particularly dark and the road is not all that rough either, but the stabilization is suffering. This, of course, gets worse at night. If going over bad roads, the footage often is too far deteriorated. So my conclusion is that Rocksteady is a very capable system when the conditions are perfect. In bright daylight under the blue sky. When there is a compromise in lighting conditions, it no longer performs with as much grace. Speaking of lighting conditions, there is no other way to say it except that I rate this camera's low light performance as poor. I was hoping for a little bit better. Again, here I'll make the reference to 2021. Maybe the performance was good enough for, say, 5 years ago, but now we expect a little bit better. There is a way to lock the max ISO, in which case the noise levels are lower, but that leaves the scene darker. Thing is that there is a HDR mode, which in darkness is able to raise the exposure by 1 or 2 stops. Issue is that you get to use either the stabilization or the HDR. It's not both. I mean, it's kind of funny. If someone asked me, out of the 2 wheels of my bike, would I keep the front wheel or the back one? I can't ride on one wheel. The cops will find me. Funny. Look, the matter is that it was almost there. Be it software enhancement. Instead of 60 frames per second, if we had to go down to 30, I would have been content. But the stabilization is a requirement and HDR is desired. We cannot have them both. Low light score for me is a C-, simply because in low light, not only does the video quality reduce, but so does the performance of the stabilization. I'd like to talk about the body of the camera. First of all, it's a bit heavier than other cameras of its kind. Not by a lot, but it may matter, especially to those who are going to mount it on a helmet with extension or something. Then the extra weight for hours may become tiresome. Having said that, I'm really impressed at the build quality. It feels solid. Everything is finished properly. The seals are well made. The camera feels like it will last through an adventure because it is made for it from ground up. It comes with a nice mounting case as well, and that is where another problem starts. This case, you have to use it to mount the camera anywhere. The camera has no mounting options, no 1/4-inch thread, nothing. It's destined to be used with a case, any case, but something additional. What a missed opportunity. The buttons are, however, even with the case on, very user-friendly. Remember I mentioned earlier that I hit the record button while riding. I have gloves on, often helmet mounted, and the design of the camera is such that I can operate it while wearing a thick leather glove without looking at the camera. The 3 buttons are separated far enough that translates to real-life benefits. So, as far as body design goes, we have good things happening as well as some missed thing that would have been handy. Is it a deal breaker? Not really. Now let's talk about the possibilities for use. I have covered the camera as an action cam so far, as that is its main job, its bread and butter. But there is a real possibility for the camera to be used for vlogging on the go. It's small enough to be carried in pocket. The front-facing screen gives us the ability to frame the shot while addressing it, and if you spend a little bit extra, you can use external microphones with the camera, which means you can get shots like this.
So with a setup like this, we can have shots like these where I have a mic inside my helmet and the camera is in front of me, and I'm able to say something profound. Point being that this is now a setup that can be used for vlogging and things like that very successfully.
Speaking of vlogging, I have used this camera in this very setup for the location series in my other channel, Property Technical, where I visit various locations and talk about its architectural or cultural significances. Do check it out. As far as the software interface is concerned, it is simple to use and it takes advantage of the touch screen. Also, the quick selection button on the side is very useful in real life scenarios. Single press changes the screen from front to back, multiple presses cycles through various preset recording modes. Speaking of recording modes, there are 3 that I use most frequently. 4K at 60, Full HD at 60 to save on storage space, and finally slow motion. While slow motion does not have stabilization, shake of hand is not that big of a problem at this sort of speed. I should also mention, video quality overall is very nice and clear when the conditions are good. At night the camera boosts up the ISO where the image quality is affected. Now this is something we have already touched upon, but all I'm going to say is that if only low light performance was better, this would have been a camera to behold. So these are some of the highs and lows of the DJI Osmo Action. Now the last bit that brings it all together is its price. In Amazon US it is listed for $199 and in Amazon Australia it is currently listed for $285 Australian dollars. I have left affiliate links for both of them in the description below. Purchase via that link helps this channel at no cost to you. So thank you for using it. Now to business. Given the price point and the shortcomings, the pros and cons, taking all into consideration, I would recommend the camera. It is a capable camera for the money. Yes, I desired more from it. It is okay to ask for more and want it to be cheaper. In the free market, any manufacturer that makes another camera that is more capable and sells for less, they will win our business. GoPro, Sony, or even others like Nikon and Canon are all welcome to compete. In saying that, for $285 Australian dollars, this time around, the DJI Osmo Action won my business. And for my use case of riding the bike through scenic places, it is serving me well. Well, that is all I had to say in this video. On my other channel, I have a lot to say about properties, and I try to be as funny as I can manage. Like in one of the recent videos, we talked about how property styling might make you a bit more money, and I jumped on a bed to make that point. Hope you check that video out. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, you take care of yourself.